Welcome to the show with Ron, where we look at the context behind the headlines. Now, you see, there's a lot out there that's already been decided for us by big business, by the government, by the media, things that we're supposed to believe, opinions we're supposed to have. So it makes sense to want to look at the context behind the headlines, especially since nowadays we've got all this AI jumble writing, this plagiarized junk. And we've also got a lot of articles that just seem to be just the facts, like they don't want us to know what's behind it. So let's get right to it. So first we have one of these obsessions that American media, has with the news. There's a lot of interest in the U.S. with severe weather, just a lot of severe weather stories. Those lend themselves to human interest reporting. And you probably heard stories of people who get obsessed with the Weather Channel, these channels that do have some 24-hour weather reporting, but a lot of it is just local weather reports just scrolling across the screen. But I don't find it that interesting. They always have wildfires and hurricanes, and it's a big human tragedy. It's always been like that. It's always going to be like that, I guess. Here we have Mitch McConnell. Now he's been the minority leader of the Senate for years and years. I think they said he's the longest person in that position. He's part of the old Republican Party, kind of Republican Party that came out of Reagan and Clinton, who was a Democrat, and the Bushes, and that was all about being internationalists, open business borders to companies and countries around the world, in hopes of bringing them into democracy and freedom. Didn't always work. But that was what it was about. And there was at least some lip service to deficits, although, Reagan, the deficit went up during his time. Clinton balanced the budget, and then George W. Bush, the second Bush, blew it out of the water again, and now we've got the $1 trillion a year deficits. But a lot has changed. So, the new Republican Party is Trump, and they've thrown out this internationalist bent. This is more back to America first. And that is actually not a surprise, but it's more in line with the isolationist pre-World War II ideology of the Republican Party. Is very much this idea where Trump is talking about the workers and restoring factories and keeping jobs in the U.S. and tamping down immigration. Until not too long ago, the idea of the American workers appealing to that was the province of the Democrats. Republicans never had that. They were for the big business and internationalists and sending jobs overseas. So it's kind of a big change in the Republicans that have happened. And part of it is the makeup of the Supreme Court. So here we look at Supreme Court to weigh in on Trump's criminal immunity in a historic case. A lot of cases that are going down. It's just a coincidence that they happen to be happening during the election year. Of course, it's not a coincidence, but in the same factor, it doesn't mean that these cases are false or fake in any way. There's a lot of heft behind them. Trump has certainly skated between the raindrops sometimes in his past, so now they're going after him in an election year. And of course, the thing that people are wondering from this is during Trump's time as president, he got to appoint several Supreme Court justices, one of which was assumed was going to be appointed during a Democrat administration during Obama's time. But he kind of stepped aside because again, the media had decided that that Hillary Clinton was going to be president in 2016, and were patting themselves and the whole nation on the back for that fact. But instead, Trump got in, and thus Trump got to make that appointment. And so all of that culminated in the reversal of the Roe v. Wade abortion ruling. Now, generally, really before Reagan's time, it was sort of understood that Supreme Court justices would not just only be appointed on political leanings. And, in fact, when Reagan was appointing his people, the Democrats were screaming and yelling that these were all ideologues and far right-wing people. A couple of them were, like Bork, but they didn't get to appoint him. But in the fullness of time, Reagan always said he's just appointing the best person and it's not about ideology. And some of the people that he appointed turned out to be super liberals in the fullness of time. However, in recent years, all this screaming and yelling and insisting that appointments are always political certainly has come to pass because nobody expected Roe v. Wade to be overturned. That was a long-standing right, kind of a liberty. And as I've explained on the channel before, one of the bedrocks, if you want to understand the way Americans think, this is a generalization, but it's about liberty. And in the same way, Americans want to have the liberty to keep and bear arms and shoot people. They want to have the liberty to have abortion too. And so it was kind of a surprise that right was overturned by the Supreme Court. Very unusual overturning of their own precedent. So this is a long way to say what's happening here is that people are looking at this and say, maybe Trump will wiggle out of this, because it seems like Trump should be able to be tried in most of these cases, like any person. But because the court has seemed to be acting for kind of right-sided right-leaning political viewpoints, maybe they're gonna do something. They're gonna do a solid for Trump. Over here we had, now I just missed this the other day. It came in and out of the news so fast. The situation in Michigan, the next primary, which of course was handily won by Trump and Biden. Of course, on the Democrat side, we have Biden, who was supporting Israel, probably hasn't done a good job in explaining, using the bully pulpit to explain why Israel is a long-standing ally in the Middle East. They're the only democracy there. They're standing up against countries that vow not only to kill them, but to kill all the Jews. And they're responding to a terrible terrorist act by an unelected terrorist group in Gaza, controlled by Iran for Iran's purposes, that is dedicated to destroying Israel. But however, is somehow supported by a lot of the international community. Of course, we have to also understand Israel has certainly probably not conducted themselves in that war so far in a way that lends itself to international support. It does appear to be a lot of indiscriminate killing. And when you conduct these operations in modern times with the media, you better make sure you put on a good, got an alarm. You better make sure you put on a good public face and explain yourself to the public. And, the Israeli government itself is split. With even before all this stuff happened with Hamas, the government there attacked by other factions within the Israeli parliament for being too right-wing and going to change the laws, so it's going to become a dictatorship, blah, blah, blah. So even internally in the government, they can't be united about the message they send. So anyway, in the United States here, we have in Michigan, for some reason, Michigan is this super cold state full of snow half the year. All of these Islamic people have settled there, and they make a sizable voting bloc. And there's some very liberal pockets there that have decided they had an uncommitted movement to vote and to kind of vote against Biden. So the people, the Democrats in the primary who they wanted to vote for Biden, over 100,000 voted uncommitted to protest Biden's super strong support of Israel. And this whole idea this is also another flip-flop. So if you're a long-standing Republican from way back, all the way to from the Republican era to the Clinton era, who was kind of a Republican in the way he conducted foreign policy, through the second Bush administration. It's funny because today the internationalists, who the Republicans used to be in engaging in having foreign wars, paying for them, insisting on international organizations and opening trade. The Democrats have taken that over from the Republicans, and we have this new Trump part of the party, the Republican Party, that's saying, "Oh, we don't want to be involved in these international things, and let's pull us out of these international treaties and obligations. Let's bring the jobs back home." So the parties have flip-flopped on that issue. So it's a surprising thing for an American who's been alive for a certain amount of time to see this sort of flip-flop in party positions occur. What else do we have? Dune Part 2. I'd see that in a movie theater. I don't think I'd see much these days, but see that's the last big fantasy book that hasn't been given the full CGI treatment, and it seems like they've done a pretty good job so far. It wasn't bad. We have Richard Lewis. I don't know if they know him outside the U.S. Gosh, he was getting old. Everybody seems to get older every year. Don't quite understand it. But yeah, I don't really remember him as a comedian. I know he was on some late night shows. I remember him as a constant sitcom actor. They always had another show he was going to be in. These are the guys I admire because I wish I had an agent like that. They just somehow they have some factor that producers and networks think will play good to middle America. And his shtick was the mining life and neuroses for dark comedy. It's kind of this New Yorker Jewish guy with the comedy that, oddly enough, sort of the way he speaks and the way he presents himself, that sort of a comedy. See, here he is with Larry David. This sort of New York comedy that even comes out of a kind of ethnic background and neurotic thinking, the Woody Allen stuff. It plays across all of America. Somehow all of America, of all stripes, seems to identify with that. Another version of that was Seinfeld. That show, when it came on, it was thought, oh, is this too peculiar a style of comedy, too alienating to middle America? But people eat that up. That's very quintessentially American. Here we have... I looked at one of these. This is about how all of the ad revenue is shifting into social media and away from these online news sources, and presumably from also organizations like New York Times and Wall Street Journal. So we got the Messenger is gone, BuzzFeed is going down the drain, Vice Media is practically going down the drain. And the interesting point that they make is that these sort of news platforms are generally work to ensure their platforms are grounded in facts and free of abuse. So you're not going to find on New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and some of these other ones, Johnny-come-lately ones, you're not going to find information about articles promoting body dysmorphia or, abusing yourself or this sort of a thing. I think people might say, this body positivity movement was promoted in these news vessels, and a lot of what we call woke. You see in the media, we have woke stuff, or these are more left-leaning. However, we have to be reasonable. We understand all the junk that's on Instagram and YouTube, TikTok and Snapchat, all of this false stuff about archaeology of the past and pyramids in Antarctica and history, human civilizations hundreds of thousands of years old, and this social media is filled with garbage in general. And while you could have qualms about left-leaning messages in the Messenger, BuzzFeed, Vice Media, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and CNN, all left-leaning, some very much so, and you can point out some probably false things or propaganda they're pushing. But in general, they fit the category of, they're not going to publish stories, again, about cutting yourself as a positive thing, or all this crazy stuff you read on TikTok, or weird stuff about archaeology, hundreds of thousands. You know what I mean. So this is making the point that the big tech giants willfully allow all kinds of evil things on their platform, and this is causing the ad revenue to go there. So, sometimes when you see these articles, it's an article from CNN, reliable sources. Most people would say CNN is probably not a reliable source entirely anymore. That's why we have a channel like this to look at context behind the news. But sometimes articles and ideas are floated like this throughout the media as a lead up for government to regulate in some way, or you tune up the populace to accept different regulation for social media, new regulation, and you need that because companies like Google and Facebook, they have a lot of pull in the government. A lot of people, I would go so far to say, as they have purchased in the government a lot of big-time lobbying that they can do that normal people can't do. We can't spend money on that. So I'd be interested to see if something like this is tuning up the populace, so a government, the U.S. Congress can perhaps enact some sort of rules to make the situation more equitable in some way. I don't know how. I do know anytime I mention this and talk about regulations, I do have people always say, especially young people, the very young people you might say are liberal and woke, they do not want more government. They want things to be more open. So there you go. Got report. Of course, this is coming from Israel. Lebanon will be next. Iran greenlights Hezbollah attack on Israel. This is the idea, they're in southern Lebanon. Another Iranian-connected group is there, and there have been attempts to widen this war because the U.S. public doesn't seem very interested in paying more money for overseas wars right now. We got Trump. He might get in. He's also kind of opposed to that sort of thing. Again, it's a big flip-flop for the Republican Party. Since World War II, that has been very internationalist. They're pulling back. We already have the situation down there in the Red Sea in Yemen, where the Houthi rebels are just shooting at ships willy-nilly. Again, certainly on the orders of Iran to widen the war, to see if they can. They see the American public's reaction, anti-Israel, if not anti-Jewish reaction. It's insane, but they see that, and they want to capitalize that. Of course, the wars, wars like Vietnam, certainly like a war like Afghanistan, when Biden pulled the small number of occupying troops out and let the country collapse, and a situation in Vietnam, those wars are not really lost and won on the battlefield. They're won and lost in public opinion in the United States. Iran surely knows that, and they want to widen this war in the face of American kind of malaise, not disinterest in continuing to support Israel. Here we have a mayor of New York calling for an end to sanctuary cities as New York City struggles to care for close to 200,000 migrants. So in the United States, we have states that operate, kind of independently of the federal government. In some cases, they're their own little countries with their own rules. So we had a kind of a lot of liberal, left-leaning big state governments that wanted to oppose federal laws against illegal immigration. And so they said, our cities are sanctuaries, and we're going to let anybody come into our city if they're illegal aliens, and we're going to give them all the services they need, and we're not going to cooperate with the federal government in detaining them or policing this problem. And that was accompanied by a very open border policy. However, by the federal government, open border policy by the Biden administration. But the polls all show most people are opposing this sort of thing. I mean, Americans can't just walk into Mexico illegally and be offered red carpet treatment. Try to do that in any other country, cross their borders illegally. Of course, the U.S. does have is a country of immigrants. There were some American Indians, but they got rid of them, unfortunately, essentially. But other than that, we're a country of immigrants, and that's the strength. We have continual waves of immigrants, so that's some of these ideas of the sanctuary city and allowing immigration come from a good historical place. However, the public is turning its back on this kind of unprecedented policies of open borders, and people are questioning why that was done. And Biden has said he's going to overturn this and flip-flop the policy to a very Trump policy that people have called, xenophobic and racist. And here we have a prominent a mayor of New York City also, in a shocking call, deciding to want to end the sanctuary cities. So this is all prepping for the November election. They could, because the Democrats have seen the polls and they say Americans don't want illegal immigration. I even know they tried to make the word illegal immigration like a negative offense to say, something like you're not allowed to say. You're supposed to, I don't know what it was undocumented. I even forget, maybe that was even wrong, but you're not even allowed to say going across the border illegally makes you an illegal immigrant. So for a while, that was a policy. Let the people come in freely. But even the Democrats are changing for the election. Now, this wasn't the one I wanted to see. Was it? Of course, everybody's already seen this, the crazy stuff of the AI refusing to generate white people in historical settings. The article is, I think it's already gone here, or maybe I saw it elsewhere, was the story of the theories behind, the conspiracy theories behind this controversy. It's getting hot in here. I'm all worked up. So the conspiracy theory is that Google well, the common thing would be, well, Google hates white people and won't show them in historical settings, or even if they show a picture of the Nazis, they show them with in a variety of racial characteristics. They won't show them. It's crazy stuff. And people say, well, this is just because all the programmers are very progressive, and they want this new AI to, again, instruct people in the proper way to think about different people. But the conspiracy theory is that Google is purposely causing this, and purposely causing the public to not trust AI, and to not want to use it. And the reason is AI and the way it works now hurts Google's business model. Their business model essentially is that search page, and that search page, the first 1 or 2 pages, is filled with sponsored links, whether they say it or not. That's why you can hardly even use Google anymore. You used to get all different kinds of information from private sources, from forums, from what? No, it's a big news organization, CNN. It's all the doctrinaire big companies that pay for space to be on that page and to present their stuff to you. So whatever you look up, the first page, oh, it's BBC, it's CNN. It's not like the net used to be, where you could find other takes on information or other archives of information, or like from a university, and look through their files to actually see what documents say, as opposed to having the big news outlets tell you what it's supposed to mean. So the idea is that those first pages are loaded with ads, and if people are just able to ask questions of AI and get an answer on a page, they're not clicking on any of those links or seeing those links or even needing a list of links, and that hurts Google's bottom line. That's a conspiracy theory, that Google would like the implementation or the wide use of AI by the public to be pushed down the line, maybe until they can figure out a way to profit from it and get those ads in there. Sounds interesting theory. Don't know if it's true or not. Yeah, you heard that. It's not here, but Google canceled their electric car project. Just a few years ago, that seemed a hot thing, and now the public's not so interested in them anymore, especially in the U.S., places where it's cold. So batteries don't work well in the cold. Do a lot of driving in the U.S. over long, long distances. Can't imagine using a charging up car under those circumstances. More about Trump's cases. And millennials, of all people, on course to become richest generation in history, because they're going to get the property from their rich parents who have built up huge amounts of it over the years. It must be nice. It's just, see, I don't want to be too cynical or disillusioned, but sometimes you got no choice. You might be interested in my book. Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, and then go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can no longer give. This is the story of There Are Still Unknown Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale for a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies in far-off places. So that's my book. Hope you'd buy it. That's all the news for today, I think. As I try to say every day, we got to be careful not to go down swinging in somebody else's fight. You know, everybody wants you to march in their parade. Let's take a moment first and look at the context of the news together and see if we can understand what's really going on in the world. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.